Full size. Okay, start it. No problem.
Good evening, everyone. I will be presenting on cutaneous melanoma. First of all, the cell responsible for melanoma, it's called a melanocyte. It is derived from neural crest cells and it is dendritic in shape. Its function is protection of skin from ultraviolet light. And the melanocytes produce melanosomes, which have the melanin granules. So the melanosomes have a tyrosinase enzyme which converts the tyrosine to melanin, which then absorbs the ultraviolet light. Uh, Typically, epidermal melanin unit is 1:36. That means one melanocyte provides melanin to 36 epidermal cells. As we can see in this figure, the melanocytes are present in the epidermis itself and not in the deeper tissue. It's present in the epidermis. The color of skin depends on the number of melanosomes. It is important to note that it does not depend on the number of melanocytes. The number of melanocytes is constant according to a species, and the color of skin depends on the number of melanosomes the melanocytes produce. And it also depends on the amount of tyrosine activity and the amount of melanin that the melanocyte transfers into the keratinocyte. This is a comparison between dark skinned people and light skinned people. As we can see, there is only one melanocyte which produces the amount of the amount of melanin produced and the amount of melanosomes, they are different in both the skin types. We have 6 types of skins based on the color of skin according to the amount of melanosomes present. And Indians, we have type 5 skin, that is brown skin. Type 1 skin, which are more fair skinned people, they are more prone for developing skin cancers. This is because, as I've told, that the melanin protects us from UV radiation, and in absence of melanin, there is nuclear damage by the ultraviolet rays, which causes chronic DNA damage, which then leads to pre-malignant disease, which then converts into malignant disease. Epidemiology, as we all know, there are three common types of skin cancers, such as squamous cell carcinoma, basal cell carcinoma, and malignant melanoma. Malignant melanoma is the least common type, but its incidence is steadily increasing due to increased sun exposure and improvement in surveillance and detection of early lesion. The median age for diagnosis is 60 years.
Priya?
Yes.
Among all this type, SCC, BCC, and malignant melanoma, one of the best prognostic disease is basal cell carcinoma, followed by squamous cell carcinoma, and then malignant melanoma.
The genetic risk factors for development of malignant melanoma are the high risk skin types, family history of melanoma, xeroderma pigmentosum, and the environmental risk factors are intense intermittent skin exposure, sun exposure, and immunosuppression. We'll discuss the risk factors. Sun exposure. There are 2 types of ultraviolet rays which are harmful to the skin, which is the ultraviolet A and ultraviolet B. Ultraviolet A light has a longer wavelength and it penetrates more deeply into the skin. And it has been established to cause melanoma and other non-melanoma skin cancers alike. Whereas the ultraviolet B light damages the most superficial epidermal layers and is responsible for sunburns. But it has also been shown that there is a direct link between the ultraviolet B type light and mutations, which then lead to oncogenesis. Now discussing the precursor lesions. First is the dysplastic nevus. It is a 6 to 15 mm flat macular pigmented skin lesion with indistinct margin and variable color. We just have to monitor the progress of the lesion to see if it's progressing to melanoma or not. Usually no other investigation is required. But if there is a suspicious lesion which requires biopsy, then we can go for histopathological examination. In histopathological examination, if it shows the mild, moderate, or severe dysplasia, then it can be excised with negative margins and there is no need for a wide local excision. Only negative margin is sufficient. Then there's the spit nevus. It is a rapidly growing pink or brown benign lesion, but it can convert into a malignant lesion. Usually this lesion is present in children and on the face, but it can be present in adults. And when in adults, it is more likely to have atypical features, such as it is larger in size, asymmetric, and can present with ulceration. The treatment is same complete excision with negative margins. Next is the xeroderma pigmentosum. It is a very rare skin disorder where a person is highly sensitive to sunlight. He or she has premature skin aging and is prone to develop skin cancers. It is caused by cellular hypersensitivity to the ultraviolet radiation, which results in defects in the DNA repair.
Priya,
Yes.
Xeroderma pigmentosa and a lot of birth nevus, I mean the benign nevus, they are the precursor for the malignant melanomas. And Xeroderma pigmentosa is one of the most riskier pre-malignant condition which have got a lot of mutations into XP genes. And XP has got a lot of subtypes like A, B, XPA, XPB, C, D, E, F. So whatever the melanoma, even I have seen one patient of a melanoma which has got a xeroderma pigmentosa as a pre-malignant condition, and then she developed malignant melanoma at all over body. Almost all the parts of body has been affected by malignant melanoma.
These are the possible signs and symptoms of melanoma. As we know, A, B, C, D, and E. A stands for asymmetry. That is, one half of the mole does not match the other parts of the mole. D is for border. The edges of the lesion are irregular, ragged, notched, or can be blurred. It has a variable color. The diameter, the lesion is larger than 6 millimeters, and but they can be smaller also. That there can be variable in lesion, the diameter of the lesion also, as it is slowly, gradually progressing in size, and it is involved in shape, size. Based on physical examination, there are 4 types of melanoma. Before this, I would like to tell the progression of a melanotic lesion. There are 2 stages of proliferation. First is the superficial stage, and then is the vertical phase. So, depending on that, in the superficial spreading type, the proliferation of the cells is mainly in the superficial layer, and it is the most common subtype, and it is not associated with
Priya, just a minute. Priya,
yes.
just a minute. I think I am seeing Dr. Dilip Pai from Baroda. Welcome, sir. Welcome. Okay. Please continue.
In the superficial spreading type, the proliferation is mainly in the superficial layers, while in other types, the proliferation is into the deeper layers. This is the most common type of melanoma and is not associated with skin. It is the lesion is present on the trunk and proximal extremities also. It is a flat which grows in a radial dimension in the superficial plane only. It is asymmetrical and a variety of pigments can be present. The next type is lentigo maligna, which is present in older individuals and present on sun-exposed areas. It is flat, dark, and variably pigmented. There is a history of slow development, thus it may be larger in size at the time of diagnosis. The lesion extends beyond the clinically apparent borders, and thus achieving negative margins on surgical excision is difficult. The third type is acral lentiginous melanoma. It is present in subingual areas, palms, and soles of feet. It is the most common type in larger individuals. It has a poor prognosis, and it can because it can be usually it is mistaken for subungual hematomas. Therefore, it is diagnosed late, and therefore it carries a poor prognosis. The fourth type is nodular melanoma. These are raised papular lesions which can occur anywhere in the body. They have atypical presentation such that they can be amelanotic also. So if a patient presents with a previous melanotic lesion, and if they see that it's suddenly not the color has reduced now, it is not a good prognostic sign. They also present with frequent ulceration at the initial presentation, and they carry a poor prognosis.
Priya.
Priya,
Yes,
sir, एक मिनट. Priya, बेटा,
Yes.
mute everybody except for the faculties. Mute everybody. There is lot of
Priya,
calls.
yes.
Priya, make me the co-host so that I can mute everybody and you can continue with the lecture.
Oh, 1 minute.
Fine.
Yes, sir. Just 1 minute.
Yeah, take your time. Sorry for the interruption, sir.
Apurva, it is difficult for us. It is a difficult topic for us.
Yes, sir. Actually, there was a lot of disturbance, so I had to ask them to interrupt and mute everybody. Anyway, Bhavna Ben is there.
Sir, I'm here.
So do you have the how much percentage wise which one is common, uncommon out of all four these?
So percentage wise, I don't have the statistics.
Anybody would like to
Bhavna Ben?
comment on that?
Sir, basically what we see is generally nodular malignant melanomas, more of and cutaneous melanoma, which we see more as compared to the rest of the other non-cutaneous melanomas. And second is a superficial spreading, and then comes is acral and the other types.
So nodular
so-
is commonest.
Nodular and superficial spreading both are common in clinical practice right now. And lentigo, the limb melanomas which we see is very little, lesser than the other types. Cutaneous
Anything
melanomas are more
specific
common.
that occurring at the leucocutaneous junction?
They are
Canal or
basic.
that?
Yeah, they are basically in head and neck, which we see as a maxillary sinus or oral cavity, and in GI tract generally we see in anal canal or lower rectal melanomas.
Is there any, I have came through this some book that it is ocular melanoma also.
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, I have.
Yeah.
I'll be speaking 1 or 2 lines about that also.
Okay.
Yeah, she has already written in the later part of her presentation.
Okay.
Shall I continue?
Yes, continue.
Yes.
Now coming to staging, there are different stagings. There are the Clark levels. There is the staging according to Breslow thickness, and then there's the TNM staging. In Clark levels, there are 1 to 5 levels. In level 1, the lesion is mainly superficial spreading, and it is into the epidermis only. In level 2, it penetrates deeper and reaches the papillary dermis. In level 3, it penetrates further and reaches the papillary reticular dermal surface interface. And in level 4, it reaches up to the reticular dermis. And in level 5, it penetrates further deep and reaches the subcutaneous tissue. According to Breslow thickness, it is defined as thin, intermediate, and thick. In thin, the depth, this is according to the depth, which is less than 1 millimeter. Intermediate is 1 to 4 millimeters, and thick is more than 4 millimeters. As the thickness of melanoma increases, the prognosis worsens. This is the TNM staging. T1 is thickness is less than 1 millimeters. Further, it is differentiated into A and B. A is without ulceration and mitosis less than 1 per millimeter square. B is with ulceration or with mitosis more than 1 millimeter square. T2 is 1 to 2 millimeters in size with or without ulceration. T3 is 2 to 4 millimeters in size with or without ulceration, and T4 is more than 4 mm in size with or without ulceration.
T1 is also subdivided into 2 parts into the recent AJCC staging, Priya. And T1A is less than 0.8 millimeter without ulceration. T1B is less than 0.8 to 1 millimeter, less than 0.8 millimeter with ulceration, and T1B is another is 0.8 to 1 millimeter with or without ulceration. So T1A and T1B is being subcategorized according to the 0.8 to 1 and less than 0.8 and 0.8 to 1 millimeter.
Okay. Based on the N staging, N1 is the only one node is palpable where it can be micro or macro metastasis may be present.
Yeah, Priya, go back, please. One slide. So this is something wrong.
No, sir, it is-
T1B, she has written more than 1 millimeter.
Sir, she has written is right, but I've just modified T1, which is subclassified into T1A and T1B.
Okay, no, because she has written T1 is less than 1 millimeter.
Yeah.
Here
This has
she
been.
written ulceration is more than 1 millimeter ulceration or a depth.
Yeah, that is what the AJCC has says. T1A is less than 0.8 millimeter without ulceration. T1B is less than 0.8 millimeter with ulceration, or 0.8 to 1 millimeter with or without ulceration. So this is what the subclassification in T1A and T1B.
N1 is one metastatic node with or without with micro or macro metastasis. N2 is 2 to 3 nodes, and N3 is 4 or more metastatic nodes or in transit metastasis with metastatic nodes. M staging is in M1A. It is the
No, sorry.
metastasis
Priya,
are
what is
present.
in transit metastasis?
Sir, in transit metastasis is when there are intermediate lesions present between the main lesion and the primary lymph node, where the sentinel in between the sentinel lymph node, it can be seen along the lymphatic spread of the lesion.
So it is basically in transit metastasis is basically any tumor which is beyond 2 centimeter from the primary tumor, but which is not in the vicinity of a regional node, and it is into intralymphatic metastasis. So that is called as an in transit metastasis. So it is coming under.
One step ahead. Suppose the nearby node may or may not be, but the node which is one step ahead is I think in transit, I believe.
Yes, sir, it is beyond 2 centimeter from the primary lesion.
Primary. Any node beyond primary, right?
So in M1A, the metastasis is into the distant skin, subcutaneous, or there is nodal metastasis, but the serum LDH levels are normal. M1B, there is lung metastasis is present, but the serum LDH levels are normal. In M1C, there can be any distant metastasis, but the serum LDH levels are also elevated. So this is the staging based on TNM classification.
So there is something called as a M1D also, that is distant metastasis into CNS, but there is no other metastasis. So M1A, B, C, and D.
What is that one? I did not get it.
Yeah, sir. M1 is a skin metastasis, and which has got a LDH correlation when M1A is there is no level increase of LDH level. M1A, 0 and 1, 1 is LDH elevated. M1B is distant metastasis to lung or to a lung, but M1B 0 is no elevation of LDH and M1B is elevation of an LDH level. M1C has got two subdivision 0 and 1. 0 has got a non-CNS, any kind of a visceral metastasis when there is a no LDH raise, and M1C1 is there is a raise LDH level. M1D is distant metastasis to CNS, but there should not be any other metastasis. And M1D0 is normal LDH and M1D1 is an elevated. There is a subclassification. I think you need to go into the recent AJCC staging.
Okay, so there is something different in metastasis.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It has totally been changed, and there was thin melanoma was called as a 0.75 millimeter or lesser. Now they add 0.8 as a one of the new figure for subclassification of T1A and T1B also.
Okay.
Coming to treatment, the standard.
Go back again to that. Staging, yes. To stage, one slide forward. Yes, it was incomplete. Okay, continue.
So stage 0 is when there is in situ tumor in T staging and there is nodal or disease. Stage 1A is lesion of T1A and without any nodal or distant metastasis. Stage 1B is tumor stage 1B and 2A with no nodal or distant metastasis. 2A is 2B and 3A with no distant or nodal metastasis. Stage 2B is tumor stage T3B and T4A with no nodal or distant metastasis. Stage 2C is tumor stage in T4B with no nodal or distant metastasis. Stage 3 is any tumor size with any nodal metastasis with no distant metastasis. And stage 4 is any tumor size with the nodal and with distant metastasis.
Okay.
Treatment, the standard treatment is wide local excision. Earlier we used to keep an excision margin of 5 centimeters, but currently maximum margin of 2 centimeters is acceptable. For a thickness of for an in situ lesion, a margin of 0.5 centimeters is sufficient, and for a thickness of less than 1 millimeter, a margin of 1 centimeters is enough. And for 1 to 2 millimeter thickness size lesion, a margin of 1 to 2 centimeters is sufficient. And for lesions more than 2 millimeters in thickness, 2 centimeter margin is advisable.
So now
the appropriate margin.
Bhavna, do you agree with
Yes,
her?
sir.
It is now changing.
Yeah, I agree. Yes, yes.
Consider malignant melanoma is very dangerous,
No,
very
I agree.
aggressive tumor and should be treated aggressively.
Yes, sir. I agree with the margins and all that, but why we need this thickness marking is just as a prognostic indicator, because age, nodal status, thickness, ulceration, and mitotic ring, these are the more prognostic markers for any melanoma, cutaneous melanoma. And why thickness is important, whether to go for the sentinel node biopsy or not. If it is a very thin melanoma like less than 0.75 or less than 1 millimeter, probably the sentinel node biopsy may not be required. If it is more than that, with ulceration, with mitotic range is more, then in this case we have to consider for sentinel node biopsy also. So these are the parameters to decide about the sentinel node biopsy also.
Somebody has asked, what is the importance of LDH? Why it is important in metastatic classification?
It is basically a, shall I answer? Sir?
Yes.
Yes, madam, you answer.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Sir, it is basically when we give a targeted therapy, like these patients have got BRAF mutations and MEK mutations, and we give interferon or immunotherapy. So this is one of the response marker also. And second, the high LDH level is suggestive of it is recognized prognostic marker also in case of malignant melanoma.
So it has a prognostic value. With normal LDH,
Yes, sir.
lower stage, but with elevated LDH, prognosis is very poor. So I
Yes,
think
sir.
it's
Yes, sir. Just like we see
Thank
in a
you.
testicular tumor, teratoma, like we see it in a testicular tumor, like alpha fetoprotein, beta SCG, and LDH level. So where there also the prognosis and treatment changes. So same way here also the role of LDH is also there in melanoma as a prognostic marker.
Okay.
Bhavna, is there any instrument to know the depth of the this lesion, or after excision we can know?
Sir, madam, that is a very good question. Actually, in case of a limb extremity, you go for excision biopsy, and there are few parameters to do an excision biopsy in a limb. You should go to the vertical in the line of lymphatics. Also, you should not do a transverse incision. You should not interrupt the lymphatic channel also, and the whole excision biopsy will give you exact depth. Like Braslow's also and Clark level classification also, you can get the depth of melanoma. And number two, it's like some areas like sole, feet. These are the places where we should not go for excision biopsy. These are the area when we should go the punch biopsy, and we have to take a deepest part. I mean, the most thickest part we have to take as a punch biopsy and send it for the biopsy and depth of melanoma.
So from the center you will take punch biopsy, or from the edge you will take?
So that, madam, that depends upon the which kind of a lesion we are getting.
Okay.
If it is a very small lesion, we go for excision biopsy and do all this pathological study. And if it is a very thick, big melanoma, the areas like sole or palm or somewhere like near to the eyelid and all that, so then we have to take a small punch biopsy and then know the status. And then after we decide about the final surgery and type of, I mean, whether we require a sentinel node or not, or lymph node dissection is required or not.
Madam, for the limb, these things, what would be the thickness of action? It should be full thickness, or should we go all the way to the muscle, or we should stop at the superficial fascia, deep fascia?
Suppose if you are taking a punch biopsy,
No, no. I'm talking about full thickness axial biopsy. I mean, axial biopsy.
So generally, if we go for excision biopsy, we take around 5 millimeter to 1 centimeter of margin. And majority of cutaneous melanoma which we get is a very small size. I mean, 1 centimeter or 2 centimeter. Very rarely we have gone a big melanomas around the eyeball or eyelid. So there we go for punch biopsy and then do excision biopsy or excision or whatever the treatment is feasible.
Okay.
Yeah. So here
Yes.
you straightway said excision. What is the role of investigation? You coming after this?
Sir, it is a clinical diagnosis, sir, and
So what about
diagnosis.
node? What about node?
So that I'll be covering, sir.
Okay. But the treatment you will do before the knowing the status of node, or straightway you to go for excision biopsy, as madam has said. When will you take punch biopsy, and when will you straightway go for excision biopsy, for benefit of all PGs?
So for diagnosis, we have to go for first punch biopsy.
So all patient punch biopsy, or
Sir, as ma'am said, ki, if the lesion is present over the digits, we can't go for excision biopsy. For that, we have to go for punch biopsy. But if it is present in other areas of the body, from where then we can go for excision biopsy, and then we determine the margin of the margin of the lesion, and then we go for histopathological examination also to establish the diagnosis, to confirm the diagnosis.
anything to do with the size of lesion? Either to go for excision biopsy or punch biopsy. That if the size is more than this, you cannot go for excision biopsy.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. There is not actually the exact size which we can mention, but if it is a very large lesions, so in that case, biopsy should be taken from the thickest portion. Punch biopsy should be taken from the thickest portion of the lesion. And I mean, excision biopsy is very inappropriate for the face, palm, sole, ear, distal digit, and sublingual area, or very, very large lesion. So these cases we took a punch biopsy from the thickest portion of the lesion. Otherwise, the rest of the other places like suspected pigmented lesion, the excision biopsy, either elliptical or shear biopsy or saucerization, these are the primary investigation
Okay,
of a
I
choice.
got it. Yes. So whenever there is an area where if the size is larger, exact size is not known, or very vital area where the deformity may occur, in that cases you have to plan the proper excision. So in those cases, take a punch biopsy. Otherwise, if smaller tumor and a non-important area, you can take excision biopsy.
Absolutely, sir. Why we do a punch biopsy also? Because suppose in a face we have got at least a chance of most micrographic surgery also, where we take a very
Yes.
small size of a tissue, where I think Priya has already mentioned in one of her slide. So it will be coming later. So I mean, you're absolutely right, sir.
Yes, please.
And only one thing before we go, sir. As sir asked, what about the lymph node lymph node status? Do we go for any radiological examination for that, or depends on the biopsy?
So that I'll be covering.
Okay, fine. Okay, go ahead.
Let's go. Yes.
The appropriate margin of excision is measured from the edge of the lesion or the previous biopsy scar. Fusiform incision is kept encompassing the margins of the excision to allow primary closure. And in subungual melanomas, amputation of the distal digit to provide 1 centimeter margin from the tumor has to be done. Mohs micrographic surgery, this is preferred for cosmetically sensitive areas such as the face, where we have to minimize the skin defect. In this, it involves sequential tangential excision of skin cancer with immediate pathological margin assessment. And it is most often used for non-melanoma skin cancers such as squamous cell carcinoma and basal cell carcinoma. And in melanomas, MMS is mainly used for in situ lesions only.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Priya. Most micrographic surgery was invented in actually, and it was that time the frozen section was took around 24 hours. They used to send a 1 millimeter of a slide and send it to the frozen section. They used to stain with a zinc oxide, and then they used to get an answer. But these days there is something called as a cryomicrotome. They take a very small, thin slides of 1 millimeter slice of a tumor, and if the one margin is negative positive, we go for another 1 millimeter margin. Then we go for another 1 millimeter margin. So the areas like face, lip, eyelid. These are the areas where the most micrographic surgery is very much helpful. Most micrographic surgery is helpful in shape areas of face like eyebrows, eyelid, nose, upper lip, lower lips, where you cannot afford to lose even a 1 millimeter of normal tissue.
So it is not a frozen for an actual biopsy.
Yes, sir. It is kind of a frozen. You get a report on immediately on theater only, and but that the previously it was done. I mean, it was like a histopathological answer, but nowadays you get on table only how much margin which margin is positive and which margin is negative. Basically, 4 areas. I mean, superior, inferior, medial, lateral, and even a base. All margin you get even very small tissues, 1 millimeter of tissues you get. So not like in other tissues, I mean, you get 1 centimeter margin and you again excise 5 millimeter, not like that. Here very small thin tissues has been sent for the frozen section.
Okay. Vital area, this is very important.
Yes, sir. In a non-melanoma, she rightly said, in non-melanoma, like in case of a CA penis, where previously people used to do total penectomy and partial penectomy, there also, even a 5 millimeter margin in a low to moderately differentiated squamous cell carcinoma is more than suffice, where can you actually preserve the shaft and the patient's urination and sexual function, both will be very well preserved. So the all vital organs, like even larynx also, this is very much helpful, where you cannot afford to lose even 5 millimeter, 1 centimeter of normal tissue.
Okay. Thank you. Yes.
The management of regional lymph nodes, there are different types, such as the elective lymph node dissection. It is performed in patients without any clinical evidence of nodal metastasis, that is without palpable nodes. It is not currently followed now. There is therapeutic lymph node dissection, whereas lymphadenectomy is performed for nodal disease, which is detected by palpation or the imaging studies. And then there is completion lymph node dissection, which is performed after finding the nodal metastasis by sentinel lymph node biopsy. Coming to adjuvant therapy.
Go back. So now how do you decide on this one? Which are the investigations? Is there any definite protocol that you go for all cases? Lymph node sonography or CT scan is necessary?
Sir, first of all, if the lymph node is clinically palpable, then we can
not palpable. Then
we can go for sentinel lymph node biopsy, sir.
Okay. And if it is palpable, then do we go for a sonography or CT?
Sir, if it's palpable, it has to be resected, sir. We go for therapeutic.
So is there any role of FNAC in such cases?
Sir.
Hello.
Yes.
Sir, whenever there is a melanoma, either into a face or arm or anywhere, you get a biopsy by either excision biopsy or a punch biopsy, you know the prognostic marker. You should go for the next level investigation called as, if it is in the face, you have to go for ultrasonography of neck. And if it is on a upper limb, you have to go for inguinal node dissection, inguinal node sonography or auxiliary sonography to know whether you get any radiological enlarged node or not. In a stage 3 melanoma, generally what routine investigation we do is CT scan of that particular area to know the nodal status. PET CT scan is also having a sensitivity, but it is not very much been described. It has got a very low yield and poor sensitivity, but when your CT scan is very indeterminate, when you have got an equivocal finding on CT scan regarding the nodal status, you must go for PET CT scan. It has got a sensitivity of around 68% and sensitivity of around 87%. And in stage 3 melanoma, when PET CT scan can also scan the areas where the normal CT scan cannot do, like limbs and arms also, the upper limb and lower limb also. So this is one of the most common investigation in stage 3 melanomas. Otherwise, the routine investigation like ultrasonography and CT scan is also one of the metastatic workup for melanoma.
Is there any criteria when you will go for PET CT?
There is no criteria for this investigation modalities. The criteria for investigation is only for the sentinel node biopsy. That is depending upon the thickness of primary tumor.
Okay. So is there any type for that sentinel node biopsy?
Sentinel biopsy is not actually indicated for the thin melanomas and very thin melanomas and without ulceration. Sentinel node biopsy is indicated for the melanoma thickness which is more than 1 millimeter and ulceration with the biopsy showing a high mitotic index and I mean these are age of the patients. So these are the criteria where you can actually think about the sentinel node biopsy. But for thin and non-thin, very thin melanomas, sentinel also is having not much role.
So how is it taken? Sentinel node means like a breast or some other method?
So same way, it is same. It is a first metastatic node, first positive node, which we see in case of breast. The same way, you inject a dye or radiocolloid material. If nuclear medicine department is there and you have got a radiocolloid material available, you can see the hotspot area, the first node, dissect it out, send it for the frozen section. If it is positive, go for the completion lymph node dissection, as she rightly said. And if it is a negative, there is no need to go for complete
node by dissection.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is in non-palpable node. I understand that.
Yeah, this is.
But suppose there are palpable nodes. Is there any reason to necessity to confirm that it is a metastatic or not?
If it is a palpable node, then we need to see by radiological parameters as well as by pathology, also by FNSC also. Whether
FNSC
it is,
so it is
yes.
always done.
If it is a palpable, one should go for, I mean, FNSC.
FNSC.
Mm-hmm.
So it is how much sensitivity is FNSC, Priya? You're not ready.
Sir?
FNSC.
Sir, FNSC.
Okay. It is done in this case. Is there any role of excision node biopsy? If you have a doubt, FNSC is non-conclusive.
Priya,
Yes, sir.
is there a FNSC is not conclusive?
Sir, if FNSC is not conclusive, we should go for excision biopsy and examination of the nodes, sir.
Okay.
But is it required that it should be if it is a palpable node? Because what you are saying, if it is a palpable node, you should go for therapeutic node dissection. Is it true? Bhavnabel, what she has written is?
What you are saying, sir?
That if FNSC is not conclusive, you go for excision node biopsy? I have a doubt.
I think if FNSC is, I mean, FNSC has got all this problem is having a false negativity also. And even in case of a stage 1 and 2 melanoma in asymptomatic distal metastasis or nodal metastasis, all this, even a blood investigation and screening investigation has got a very low sensitivity. They are very insensitive to things. You can send it for FNSC. FNSC is negative. You can go for she has said it is called as elective lymph node dissection. You can call it as a prophylactic node dissection also.
Okay, so there is a role of prophylactic node dissection.
Yeah, that is a role of yeah. If your I mean FNSC part is very low sensitive and you cannot exactly, because see, melanoma is diagnosed on immunohistochemistry.
Yes.
The type, yeah. So FNSC in such cases, like the same way it is case of a DCIS also. This is also diagnosed on immunohistochemistry. It cannot be done on a frozen section on the moment within a 45 minutes of a time. So in that case, you can go for the elective lymph node dissection.
So would you like to go for elective biopsy of a single lymph node or directly axial biopsy of for the whole group?
We generally don't go for the excision biopsy for diagnosis. You can go for the sampling. I mean, this electro lymph node dissection. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Priya, go ahead.
So when do we go for LDH? All patients we go for LDH serum LDH level? Priya?
In the patients in which we are suspecting there can be distant metastasis, that we go for LDH, sir, in which we are suspecting extensive disease and so where the thickness is larger, the size of the lesion is more. Then we
How much more?
So as ma'am said, the more than 1 millimeter thickness, if it's
So it
there.
is not ruled that you should go for LDH in all patients of malignant melanoma.
I think you should go for LDH in all the
No.
cases of malignant melanoma in a stage 1, 2 also and 3, 4 also. Why it is in a 3 and 4? Because you are already going to give rise to biochemotherapy. I mean, like all interferon and BRAF mutated agents and all that thing. So this is also one of the response marker also, and also the prognostic marker also. So LDH is recommended for all stages, stage 1 to 4 case of malignant melanoma. It is more useful in stage 3 and stage 4.
Okay. Does the level will change if you do it later on after doing excision?
What will change, sir?
Suppose you have done excision, then you go for LDH.
Yeah, it might change. I mean, it is basically a tumor activity into your blood. Any tumor marker which you do, it is basically a representation of a metastatic cells within the bloodstream. So it is more of a recurrence value, a recurrent patient value, and it has got a more metastatic patient value. And I mean, it is very, very sensitive for the metastatic disease. Whatever the tumor marker you take, whether it is a CA125, CA or any other thing, it tells you about your biochemical recurrence or metastasis.
So it is a more value because baseline should be done in all cases.
Exactly. All tumor markers you should do at a baseline. Then only you can compare with the recurrent values or it in the case of a metastatic disease.
Yes. Okay, continue.
Coming to adjuvant therapy, interferon alpha 2b has been shown to have some role. It is the only systemic adjuvant therapy which is approved by the FDA. It is given at nearly the maximum tolerated dose with 1 month of intravenous therapy followed by 11 months of subcutaneous injections 3 times a week. But it has a low therapeutic index and there is a substantial adverse effects such as neurotoxicity and hepatic toxicity. And due to high cost effects and toxicity effects, it is not used currently in a widespread manner. Radiation therapy,
there is one question, Bhavna. I don't know anything. Yes. Is there any role of other tumor markers like
yes, sir.
Melan A51?
Yes, sir. It is basically immunohistochemistry marker, and it requires histopathological staining and serial section. And this HMB45 and Melan S100. These are the marker for ISC, and this is to diagnose tumor and even for the subtypes also.
So it has no value as such.
It has a value, sir. It has a value.
Only IHC.
Yeah.
For immunohistochemistry.
Yeah, it has got a value, sir.
So because it is advised to be done.
Because routine micrometastasis can.
Audio
is gone.
Ma'am.
It requires immunohistochemistry staining, and these are the types of.
Please repeat it.
Repeat it. We didn't hear you.
Sir, see, the melanoma is a case where you cannot diagnose routinely by HE staining or serial sectioning. You require a ISC staining, and these are the markers to diagnose the melanoma. So HMB45 and Melan1 or Melan A or S100, these are the required ISC markers for malignant melanomas.
But no prognostic value. Or there any prognostic value?
Yes, sir.
It is. Okay. Yeah, continue.
Even these markers are also important to identify the sentinel nodes also, positive sentinel nodes also. So it is required. Regarding interferon, just Priya, just to intervene. Yeah, sir. Interferon is interferon immunotherapy has been routinely given to all metastatic malignant melanomas. The only thing which we don't, practice much is the only thing is about a cost. It is on 20 to 40,000 rupees per sitting injections. Interferon is required, and you require to follow patients serially in terms of clinical examination, MRI, CT scan, and PET CT scan. So it has been used, one of the most commonly used treatment. And there are other things also, BRAF mutators, ipilimumab, Then other, I mean, this biochemotherapy is also available. So interferon is being used for malignant melanomas.
How costly it is?
Yeah, it is very costly, sir. It is very costly. If patients generally takes in cancer hospital in a clinical trial, and affording patient can take they pay and they take this treatment.
But very costly.
Yeah, it is costly, sir.
So it is even in case all cases or only metastasis?
Metastatic, sir. It is for the
Only
metastatic. Metastatic.
Okay. So it's okay. But it has a palliation result or?
Sir, it is for the adjuvant treatment also, and for metastatic disease, it is for the palliation.
Palliation only. And so is
It
there
is,
any
yeah.
when will you give it as an adjuvant?
Adjuvant, if your patient is having a stage 3 disease, positive nodes, and if you want to treat as to remove the cancer cells into the bloodstream, you have to not only this, there is something called as NDPDL1 therapy is also available, nivolumab is also available, then BRAF mutations agent are also available. So I mean, it has expanded like anything. The malignant melanoma treatment has gone beyond to our imagination.
Okay. So it is given even when there is no proven metastasis to prevent it, like a breast.
Yeah, it is given as adjuvant also and for metastatic also.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Coming to radiation therapy, the malignant melanoma is relatively radio resistant, and adjuvant radiotherapy is not used routinely. There is some role in patients after lymphadenectomy to limit the nodal recurrence, but it has been shown in trials that it does not increase the disease-free survival or the survival rate of the patient. Follow-up of the patients, the follow-up is individualized, and due to the risk of recurrence and patients having up to 10% increased risk of developing a second primary melanoma, it is most important component of surveillance is a thorough physical and history and physical examination, which is performed annually for life. In stage 0, 1 and 2A, which are termed as low risk stages, 6-monthly follow-up for the first 3 years and then annually is sufficient. And for stage 2B, 2C and 3, which are high risk melanomas, 3-monthly visits for the first 3 years, then 6-monthly for the next 2 years, and then annual visits are advised. The treatment of a recurrent disease, in case of a local recurrence, a recurrent tumor is termed as a tumor within 2 centimeters from the wide local excision scar or the skin graft. These are considered local recurrence, and the recurrence risk increases with the tumor thickness, which is ranging up to ranging from 0.2% in 0.75 mm thickness lesion to up to 13% recurrence in a lesion which is more than 4 mm thick. The treatment is surgical resection to histologically negative margins with 1 centimeter of margin with negative disease. Now the in-transit disease, this is the disease which arises from tumor deposits within the lymphatic channels, which drains the primary tumor and is manifested as subcutaneous or cutaneous nodules located between the primary tumor and the regional lymph node basin. The only sign on examination may be a palpable nodule, and if suspected, FNAC or excision biopsy is done to confirm the diagnosis, and imaging should also be done to detect distant metastases. The in-transit disease, which is amenable to resection, we should do excision up to the negative margins with 1 centimeter of margin, but if it is not amenable to resection, there we can give intralesional injection of BCG, interleukin 2, interferon alpha, but none of these have been approved by FDA. And for extensive or recurrent in-transit disease, with it confined to the upper or lower extremity, may be treated by there's a new technique called the hyperthermic isolated limb perfusion, HILP, which is
like in sarcoma.
Yes, sir. Yes,
like in sarcoma.
Yes, sir. Soft tissue sarcomas, limb sarcomas.
In this method, either through the femoral or axillary vessels, these are cannulated and connected to a pump oxygenator that circulates heated chemotherapy locally, while the tourniquet isolates the extremity to limit the systemic toxicity.
Yes, sir. It is almost like a HIPEC we practice in CA/ORI, where we
Yes.
don't want a systemic toxicity of IV chemotherapy, and we want to kill the tumor cells of the 4 to 5 millimeter of depth. And this hypothermic isolated limb perfusion is not a new technique. It is a very old technique practiced since long for soft tissue sarcomas and limb melanomas.
So it is a part of limb salvage when it is possible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is basically to kill the tumor cells which is circulating into the limb, and the rest of the other part of a body is totally normal. You don't want a toxicity of a chemotherapy or that particular agent to the other part of a body.
Priya, you have taken prognosis, or it comes later?
The prognosis separately I haven't told, sir. Earlier when I've given subclassification, then only I've told that so superficial spreading has the best prognosis, and nodular malignant lentigo maligna has the poorest prognosis because of late
No.
diagnosis.
When we talk about the size of the tumor, say routinely what ma'am has said, around 1 mm size thickness tumors are there. Where we go for a simple local excision with primary closure and the lymph node negative.
Yes.
So what would be? It would be survival will be almost normal.
Yes, sir. Sir, if we have surgically negative margins and there are no lymph node metastasis, then it is a good survival value.
Okay.
Have you given survival rate? Stage 1, 2, 3, 4, or like that?
Sir, I haven't included.
That is what actually I was asking for.
Sir, I haven't included that.
Bhavna ma'am, can you elaborate please?
Yes, sir, I can elaborate. Actually, I mentioned at one particular one of my, written somewhere also. Okay, that depends upon the thickness of your tumor, and that is basically the survival is considered as a 5-year survival according to the Braslow's thickness. If it is an in situ lesion, then 90 to 100% of survival, 5-year survival. Stage 1, which is less than 1 millimeter, is 80 to 90% 5-year survival. Stage 2 is 1 to 2 millimeter, is 70 to 80% 5-year survival. Stage 3, 2 to 4 millimeter size Braslow's thickness, 60 to 70% survival. And stage 4, which is more than 4 millimeter, is 5-year survival is up to 50%. This is very important, Priya. Actually, anyone can ask you an exam.
Yeah. Priya, that's what we wanted, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now a few slides about melanoma of the anal canal. Anal melanoma consists of about 0.5 to 2% of all the anal malignancies, but it constitutes less than 2% of all the melanomas. It is the third most common melanoma after cutaneous and ocular variety, and the most common site for primary gastrointestinal melanoma is the anal canal. There are no known risk factors. The risk factors for cutaneous melanoma, like the nevus, sunlight exposure, they do not predispose to anal melanoma. The symptoms, the most common symptom is bleeding per rectum, which is present in up to 50 to 60% of the cases. There can be perianal itching and irritation, which is present in up to 20% of the patients. There can be a mass protruding through the anus and perianal discharge. This is more common in women, and the mean age of diagnosis is 70 years. And distant metastasis is seen in up to 30% of the people at the time of diagnosis. The spread of anal melanoma is the lymphatic spread, which is to the inguinal and mesorectal lymph nodes, and systemic spread is to the lungs, liver, brain, and bones. The diagnosis is mainly done on clinical basis by visual inspection and anoscopy. It commonly presents as a polypoidal mass, and the distance from the anal verge and mobility should also be assessed to assess the local spread of the disease. It can also present as a thrombosed pile-like masses. The differential diagnosis can be the first is anal carcinoma or lymphoma, or it can be a perianal hematoma, thrombosed hemorrhoids, anal or rectal polyp. The investigations include proctoscopy and biopsy, ultrasound of the abdomen and pelvis to rule out liver metastasis. As I said, in up to 30% of the patients, distant metastasis is present at the time of diagnosis. And endoluminal ultrasound is also important to know the depth of the invasion and the nodal status. Immunohistochemistry is important to see the melanoma panel of markers, which is the S100 protein, vimentin, melin A, and HMB45, and to rule out other diseases such as cytokeratins to rule out Paget's disease, CD45 to rule out lymphoma, chromogranin and synaptophysin to rule out undifferentiated carcinoma, CD34 to rule out GIST, and desmin and caldesmon to rule out sarcoma. The staging of anal melanoma differs from that of cutaneous melanoma. It is based on the Breslow classification, and anal melanoma is staged on a clinical basis, focusing on local, regional, and distant spread.
So that is like it is clubbed with the CA anal canal and rectum and treated like that also.
Yes.
And how is it different from a squamous cell carcinoma of anal canal?
So this has at the time of diagnosis, the distant spread is more, and sir, it may or may not be even after regional excision. It may not be curative because the distant metastasis is already present. So it does not. The local excision also does not provide any additional survival benefit.
Basically, melanoma from squamous cell carcinoma is highly aggressive malignancy for anal canal or any GI tract, especially it occurs into the anal canal. What happens to the anal melanomas is generally it has been treated 2-3 times as a hemorrhoids.
Hemorrhoids, yes.
Yeah, majority of patients come to us. When I was in GCRI, I have seen a patient operated for 2 to 3 times for hemorrhoidectomy. And the last time when the third time was hemorrhoidectomy was done, some surgeon has sent it for the histopathological examination. It is suggestive of melanoma. So the diagnosis of malignant anal melanomas are late because we see hemorrhoids very commonly. Thrombus piles we see very commonly. First comes in our mind is piles or thrombus piles. So we do surgery, but we never send it for the histopathological. Even I was
fistula also. Sometimes fistula.
Yeah, sir. Yeah. So whenever there is an analoma, if you ask a retrograde history, patient has been operated 2 to 3 times for hemorrhoidectomy or any anal fissure or fistula surgery. So it doesn't come as an early stage. And the second thing which differs from squamous cell carcinoma of anal canal to melanoma is squamous cell carcinoma of anal canal we treated with the CTRT. The stage 1 and 2 we generally treated with the CTRT. It is a first treatment of a choice. Salvage surgery or APR is done only in case of a persistent disease, recurrent disease, or residual disease in case of a squamous cell carcinoma. While in case of a melanoma, in a stage 1 or 2, we generally go for wide local excision. We don't go for the abdominoperineal resection. APR is only for the stage 3 disease, and stage 4 generally we go for the palliative treatment because the prognosis is very, very bad in case of anal melanomas.
Okay, good. Thank you. Yes, Priya.
The staging of anal melanoma is based on a clinical basis, which is focusing on the local, regional, and distant spread. The stage 1 is local disease, stage 2 is local disease with regional lymph nodes, and stage 3 is distant metastatic disease.
Regional meaning inguinal or regional meaning mesorectal?
So both.
Sir, it is an inguinal node.
Inguinal should be
basically
inguinal.
first is inguinal. Regional comes as a distal. It is if it is go to the iliac node, it goes to the for anal canal. It will be a distal metastasis. Hello.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, continue.
So stage 1 and surgical excision is the treatment of choice, and as we discussed earlier, also melanoma is highly resistant to radio and chemotherapy. And there is no role of either in the as the definitive treatment or as adjuvant therapy. When we come to surgery, the wide local excision or abdominoperineal resection can be done for stage 1 or 2 disease.
So here it is different than Madam has said.
No, sir, I've written later that they provides no additional benefit. APR does not provide any additional benefit than wide local excision.
Yes.
For wide local excision R0 resection is preferred, and when anal sphincter is involved or R0 resection mandates sphincter excision, APR is indicated in stage 1 and stage 2.
Very good. Okay.
And according to the studies where comparison of the survival of patients who underwent APR with those who underwent wide local excision showed no statistically significant advantage for either procedure in patients at all the different disease stages, and therefore APR should therefore only be performed when local excision is not possible or for palliative purposes. Role of lymph node dissection, inguinal or mesorectal lymph node dissection does not confer any survival advantage, although it may improve the loco-regional control because of the early presence of distant lymph node metastases. In stage 3, we can try systemic chemotherapy, and drugs used are similar to those used in cutaneous melanoma, and the commonly used drugs are dicarbazine and temozolomide. The prognostic factors include tumor thickness, presence of ulceration, mitotic rate, the nodal involvement, and the relation to the dentate line. And in stage 1 and 2, the mean survival is 11 to 20 months, whereas in stage 3, the mean survival is less than 10 months. Some few words about the non-cutaneous and ocular melanoma. Non-cutaneous melanoma, the neural crest cells that form the melanocytes also localize to other tissues and organs, such as the mucosal surfaces within the eye or the leptomeninges. Within the eye, the melanocytes are found in retina and the uveal tract, which includes the iris, ciliary body, and the choroid. In the United States, ocular melanoma is the most common intraocular malignant neoplasm in adults. And the primary treatment is enucleation or iodine-125 brachytherapy. And other options available are photocoagulation or partial resection. This shows the melanoma of the choroid, the melanoma of the ciliary body, melanoma of the iris. These are some photos depicting the same. Unlike the cutaneous melanomas, due to lack of lymphatic vessels in the uveal tract, metastatic spread of ocular melanoma occurs via the blood. And metastasis occurs almost exclusively to the liver, but resection is rarely possible because there are multiple micrometastases into the liver. And although CT scans may suggest a solitary liver metastasis, MRI may display hundreds of smaller lesions. Mucosal melanoma, the most common sites are head and neck, which includes the oral cavity, oropharynx, nasopharynx, and the paranasal sinuses, anal canal, and the rectum, which we've already discussed. Because of the occult location of many of these lesions, of the mucosal melanoma lesions, patients present with advanced diseases and have a poor prognosis. And extensive local resection, such as the abdominoperineal resection or pelvic exenteration, does not reduce the overall survival rate due to the presence of metastatic disease. Thank you, sir.
I just want to add one thing. If you see any patient is having a large liver metastasis and FNSE or biopsy suggestive of metastatic melanoma, and if you don't find any primary, you please go for MRI of eyeball or ocular area, because your primary will be sitting there somewhere into a, it will be, you're dealing with a ocular melanoma. For ocular melanoma, there are two types of a surgery. One is a vision sparing surgery, another is a vision losing surgery, where you have to go for eyeball exenteration. And vision sparing surgery, you can try for laser surgery, some local application like 5-FU or imicloid ointment or photodynamic therapy. And if it is involving the entire eyeball or the muscles and everything, then you have to go for eyeball exenteration. One more thing about the surveillance of, the routine follow of melanoma patient, one should go for the serial photography of all nevus, all birthmarks which is present into patient's body. So when you see any patient of a cutaneous melanoma, you don't see that particular reason. You totally examine patients. You make a patient totally exposed and see all her or his spots. And you guide the patient with, if anything is having a changes of ABCD like asymmetry, then border and color and increase in size, patient has to go for excision of that particular lesion. If this is possible, basically it is for the inherited melanomas, or those who are congenital, or those who are running into the families. And one more thing is, for the examination of a cutaneous melanoma is something called as a dermoscopy. There's some special glasses available where all dermatologists are practicing, but you can actually see these lesions, and can make out, and serial photography is very much important. Every 3 monthly or 6 monthly, we tell a patient to do a serial photography. So any change in any particular cutaneous lesion can be well diagnosed. Even patient himself or herself can diagnose.
Okay,
Anybody
sir.
would like to say anything? There is one question somebody has asked. Is there any hint, method, or protocol not to list melanoma on PR and proctoscopic examination?
Yes, sir. Melanoma, if it is a nodular melanoma, you can palpate as a thick, tissue or lesion. Hemorrhoids, if it is non-thrombose, it is hardly palpable. You cannot, your fingers cannot palpate it. If it is a thrombose, then the picture is something different. But I must say, if it is a recurrent piles or recurrent hemorrhoids, one must suspect for melanoma and go for biopsy.
It's a high degree of suspicious, that's all.
Yes, sir.
Unusual
Yes, sir.
presentation,
Yes,
not
sir.
a soft but a form too hard.
Yes, sir.
And at least if the patient comes with recurrent hemorrhoid, very recently, then you should be highly suspicious. Even if it is negative, you should send for a biopsy.
Yes, sir. See, this Dr. Rakesh's question is very much right. At MS level, when you are a student, it is very it is very difficult to diagnose a malignant melanoma of anal canal when you see hundreds of hemorrhoid patients on a day-to-day basis. So,
yes.
So it will be your second thought. It will not be your first thought.
Yes. Okay. Bhavna, thank you very much. Thank you
you,
very
sir.
much.
Thank you so much, sir. I'll be happy.
Thank you, Bhavna.
Thank you, sir. I'll be happy to part of another lecture also. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
sure.
You have given me.
This platform, it is
Hello?
easier for everybody.
Hello.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you
thank
very
you, ma'am.
much. Okay,
Thank you
see
so
all
much.
tomorrow 9 a.m.
Thank
for
you, sir.
thyroid case. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.